Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and warm welcome to Success Talks with Coach Mungate. This is an episode where today I'm going to be interviewing this amazing man. He is the founder of Compulink Systems, a pastor, a family man, and I'm privileged to be also sitting down with my own pastor. So it's a huge honor and a privilege. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Mr. Edward Nyamuda.
Thank you, Coach Mungate.
Amazing. Mr. Nyamuda, it's so amazing having you on this show, and special thanks to Compulink Systems for sponsoring this particular season. But Mr. Nyamuda, please do tell our viewers, who is Mr. Nyamuda and how did you found this amazing company that is doing these exploits?
Talking about founding the company, I think it was in 1987. There was something called the Affirmative Action Group, and they organized a national business conference, which was attended by the total hierarchy of the government at the time. The president was there and quite a number of the cabinet ministers at the Sheraton. And I remember the chairman at the time was someone called Mapondera, and the Secretary General was Strife Masiwa. But coming out of that conference, we were all challenged if we had business ideas, anything entrepreneurial, to go out and start businesses. So this was 1987, and then I was so challenged at that conference that in 1991 we started Compulink Systems.
Wow, this is 1991.
That's correct.
Right, and the company has run from 1991 and now it's still in existence.
That is correct. Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think in Zimbabwe it's really rare to find some companies that run for so many years, because we see these bus companies that started back then and they went, but please do take us through the journey from 1991 to up until now. How has been the journey for Compulink Systems?
Compulink Systems started to really address a need which existed at the time. It was called local area networks. So we were addressing that need in technology. There was also a new technology coming in, which was migrating from data centers to branch networks, where, for example, a big bank, instead of having one central place for data processing, they had computing capacity in every branch, and then they would link the branch back to the data center. So we were doing the communications there, hence the name of the company, Compulink, which is computer linking, which is linking computers. So that's where we came in to address a technological need which existed in the market.
All right, so please take us through the journey from the end. You were the founder, right? And now we have another MD. Please take us through that journey, the major highlights, some of the successes of that journey, and how you managed to actually build this organization to where it is now.
Compulink has been a hugely successful organization. We had many blue chip corporate clients. I will not mention them by name, but they know themselves, and they've supported us through the years. We also were very active in government. And so we have a history of really offering services to both blue chip and medium tier organizations. We have been supplying our computing power from servers to laptops, desktops. We've been offering networking solutions, so it's switches and routers and fiber and connectivity solutions and wireless. And so this has been our offering to the industry, making businesses more efficient in their operations and making them also more profitable as they used our products and services. But technology is evolving, so technology is always changing. So I personally come from the data center era, where you have huge hard drives and huge data centers which need special air conditioning. And now we have come to the current devices, which are very powerful but very small, and they operate in different environments. So technology has changed. Connectivity, then we used to use multiplexers Now you have the internet where anything is connected to anything. And so sometimes some of these technological changes can come faster than a brain can cope. And so you look at yourself and you realize that maybe you are holding onto a technology which is now obsolete. And you're still trying to manage the current technology world using the experience of yesterday. And so it became counterproductive. We needed to think how to remain at the cutting edge of technology. And part of the solution was to bring in younger people.
All right. I love that you mentioned bringing younger people. I think one of the biggest problems that we have here in Africa is that of succession. You know, handing over the baton stick to a younger person to take over the business. It might be succession even in family businesses. And you are one person who has managed to achieve that. Please take us through that journey. How did you manage to identify a successor for the business, Compulink? And please just help other entrepreneurs there. How can one do it?
Okay. I think to have a successful transition, there's also, number one, it's your own mindset and your desire for the succession to happen. So it's a desire to hand over the baton, but it also requires a readiness for someone to receive the baton. And so those two things work hand in hand. But my understanding is that God is eternal, so He is from everlasting to everlasting, and yet we have a limited lifetime. And so you ask yourself to say, how does someone with a limited lifetime relate to a God who is eternal? And so God relates to us transgenerationally. When He looks at me, He sees my children, He sees my grandchildren as the same person. So if He makes a promise to me and He fulfills it in my children, in His view, He has fulfilled the promise. Like what happened with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they were promised the promised land, and now they are living on the land and saying the land came from our great-great-great-grandfather. God fulfilled His promise. So when I start something and I'm doing something, from a very early age with my children, they just used to say, even if we buy a car, this is our inheritance. Drive properly, Dad. Don't bang the car. You know, it's our inheritance. And so we grew up just thinking and speaking like that. They don't have to earn anything for what I own to be their inheritance. It's theirs. That's how God has created life. And then it came to a time when we needed to transition the business. We knew it was a delicate time. But one of the main things is that me and Nyamuda, we were both working in the business. We were in agreement that it's time to transition the business. You see, I was the CEO. And so if your wife comes and says, let's transition the business, it's like she's saying you're not leading very well. But we were in total agreement. And so we consulted our pastor, Pastor Tom Duchel from Celebration Church, to say we would like to transition the business. At the time, we also had family members working in the business. And he advised us, he said, don't just arbitrarily start giving people positions, etc. Go to an HR consultant, ask them to go through a process with you of identifying the successor. And so we worked at that time with Laurie Mack. You may know the late Richard Marconi. He gave us excellent service. So we went to him and we shared with him that we wanted to transition the business. So he shared with the potential candidates who were our children to really find out really the fit of each child for a particular role in business. And so when he did his analysis, after a week he came back and he said that there is no right or wrong profile for a person, but there's a right or wrong fit for a person. Some people are fitted to be managing director and CEO, others fit better to be chief finance officers, and others fit better to be projects directors, just depending on how they fit. So of the two people we presented to them, they then told us that Simon is the one who has the fit for the managing director position. So we just set the family down and we said, We've been to a consultant, we've paid a lot of money, they have made a recommendation, and so we will not renege on what the consultant has told us. We will go along with what the consultant has said, and then we'll begin to build around it.
All right. That's amazing. Other than you engaging a consultant, what would be maybe some of the qualities maybe that you would recommend to maybe some people in business who are maybe they are running a family business and they have children? What would be some of those qualities that the HR manager recognized in Simon that you would recommend other people to look at when they're looking for a successor?
I had quite a number of things, and many things come to mind. For example, what the HR manager did was to ask them to write maybe a 2-page document of a vision of, if you were allowed to run this company, where do you see it in the next 5 years, or where would you take it in the next 5 years? And then they would have to say what they would do. But this is for the HR manager. But for us, it's things in conversation. Organizations are not always doing well. And sometimes organizations have opportunities which are not being exploited by the current leadership. And so in conversation, someone can come and they are pro-offering to say, I think if we could try this, maybe it would do well for us. And I think if we could try that. But at the time when the organizations are not doing very well, you need someone whose mindset as they come in is that I've not come to chow. I've come to make this thing work, because sometimes it's quite sacrificial. So sometimes also you are looking for someone who says, I know it's a bit hard going right now, but I come prepared to just put in the time and the effort and the sacrifice to make it work. So it's again that thing, it can show through that someone would like to make it work. And I think because of sometimes a limited vision from an existing leadership, you can begin to become challenged by someone who says we can excel in this area and we can do well in that area. So it's not just someone who comes and they're hero worshipping you all the time. You're the mightiest and the greatest and you're the best thing we've ever seen. You need people who can say we can go to the next level. We can move forward. We can do something here. And the beauty is that at the time they come into a company, there is a certain infrastructure already in place. And so they are saying, we are not starting from scratch. We are building on what has already been built. And I think you will find that a younger mind can build better on what has already been built than you can do yourself. And so in conversation, you can begin to see someone with a mind to go to the next level, to build better, to do more.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really profound and powerful. I think those are amazing qualities that to identify. I think the key thing that you mentioned there is looking also at their capacity in terms of mindset, in terms of even skill set and ability of taking things to the next level. Moving on, Mr. Nyamuda, there's this thing that we have, especially I love that you mentioned that a younger mind can actually can come up with new ideas. And the greatest problem that we have, especially with people that start organizations, is they don't embrace the new ideas that young minds bring. What would be your advice to such people, and what would you recommend to such people who are doing that? Who they want to take it to the next, they want to hand over the business to the next level, but they are not willing to embrace the ideas that are coming with the new generation.
I think one of the greatest things is to distinguish between employment and ownership. And I think the greatest challenge which comes is that when someone has started a business, they see someone coming in maybe in the position of managing director or chief executive officer, even if it's their child, they see as though they are losing power. And so really it becomes an issue of trying to protect a measure of power and a measure of autonomy. And yet, if they could understand that they can still own the business, but give the running leadership to a younger mind, and they still own the business, but so there's a difference between operating as a chief executive officer or even as a managing director and owning the business. And so what I have found in the older people is that they keep their children out of the business. They keep their children out of the business. And with their tongue, they say to the children, we want you to be part of the business. But when you see the way they operate, they just want to hold everything close to their chest. Now, if you are in a season of sacrifice and you are a young mind coming into a business, the last thing you want is to work your heart out and find that the money which came in is no longer there. You would like to be able to say, things are tough right now, so if we can make a little money, we must invest it in this area and in that area, and then you grow it. But if the older person would like to continue spending like they used to when things were okay, then it can really demoralize the younger person coming in. And what you end up having is the younger person thinking, I can leave this business alone, I can go and start out by myself. But what's happening now is whatever was built up to that point will eventually become useless. And the younger person is starting from scratch. What we need to do is to be able, for example, if I'm running a $100,000 business, if I can hand it correctly to the next generation, it can easily become $1 million business. I can continue to getting my 100,000 or my 200,000, and the new people who come in can also be motivated as they now have access to the 800,000. But if I would like to continue to control even the finance, because the finances don't belong to me, they belong to the business. I should just chow what is in my personal account and let the business run as a business. And so the challenge comes when we keep dipping into the coffers and affecting really the viability of the business. So to the older people, I'm saying, if you hand over the business to the next generation, hand over the business, hand over the human resource strategy, hand over the financial strategy, hand over the sales strategy, the marketing strategy, hand over even the crafting of the vision for the next 10 years. Some of the things that the younger people will want to do will give you goosebumps. but allow them to do so, because they are better off than you are, because they've learned a little bit from you, because they were your children. So they are better off than you were when you started. So it's a matter of having faith in our children.
Wow, oh, that's powerful. Thank you very much for sharing that. And then another problem that I've seen as well in family businesses is, I think, separating that this is your child, this is, like you mentioned, that you were working together with your wife. How then can one separate the two? That we are here, we are at work, we are not at home, or how do you go around that and not mix home issues with business? You know, how do you do that when running these family businesses?
I take your question to mean someone is a family member and they're in the business and they're doing as they like.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's a difference between employment and ownership. Because your child is your child, they probably have a certain ownership of the business. But when it comes to employment, then they must also come with the acumen of occupying a particular position. So you give your family members roles where they add value to the running of the business. Because what the business is doing is that it's creating value for the family. And so if a family member occupying a certain business position ends up with the family doing not as well as they would have done, then it will be addressed in exactly those terms. So yes, they will maintain their ownership by virtue of being a son, but you need to earn your place if you are to occupy a role and a position within the organization.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you very much, Mr. Nyamuda, for sharing those insights with us. Viewers, we're going to take a short break. Please do subscribe, comment, like, share this particular episode. Thank you. Success will always come at a cost. The question is, are you willing to pay the cost? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this amazing channel. This is Success Talks with Coach T. Mungate. Please do subscribe to this channel. And this is your success tip with Coach T. And today I would like to talk to you about paying the cost. You know, whatever thing that you desire, you need to be willing to pay the cost for it. Whatever product you want in a shop, you need to be willing to pay the cost. The biggest question that I have for you today is, what cost are you willing to pay for the success that it is that you desire to achieve? You know, and I would just like to share with you guys 3 essential keys or 3 things that you need to do in order to pay the cost. Number 1, you need to work hard. Nothing comes without you working. Number 2, you need to pay the cost by sacrificing. What do I mean by this? You need to sacrifice something. You need to be willing to let something go in order to get what it is that you want. Number 3, the last point is you need to pay the cost with your time. You know, there is this great, interesting book that I once read, and it shared that for one to become a master in a certain field, they have to do that particular thing for 10,000 hours. Imagine, 10,000 hours. So what time are you putting into the dream that you desire to achieve? Thank you very much for watching this Success Tip with Coach T. Mungate. Please do subscribe to the channel, Success Talks with Coach T. Mungate, to get more of these inspiring episodes. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and today on the show I'm with Mr. Edward Nyamuda. This is the founder of Compulink Systems, and special thanks to Compulink Systems for giving me this amazing iPad which I'm using to interview Mr. Nyamuda here. So Mr. Nyamuda, moving on with the interview, you mentioned something before the break about ownership and about ownership. Please do talk to us more about that.
Okay. Like I said earlier, that when God looks at me, He sees me, He sees my children, He sees my grandchildren. So the things that I own really are an inheritance for my children. And so to own as having created something, or to own through inheritance, is ownership. So if I have something and I have a number of children, there's a way in which what I have will be distributed to my children, and that's as an inheritance. And so when you distribute what I own to my children, it's called ownership. So because you own something, you can receive benefits by virtue of ownership. But if you are also employed by virtue of working in an institution, you must get a salary. So you don't have to work in an institution to own it. You can own it while working somewhere else. And so what I'm saying is, not all family members need to work in the business, but the few family members who work in the business must be given a salary commensurate with their contribution in the business. And then what the owners of the business will share is the profits at the end of the business. So also what you don't want to do is to make the people working in the business be so disgruntled and demotivated, because everything is just going to people who are not working in the business. Okay. So it's a decision that you have to make. If I work full-time in the business, I need to have a salary. And then if I'm also, by virtue of being a son in the business and I have an inheritance, I then also get a benefit from owning a part of the business.
Oh, wow. Because I think many a times people don't understand that. You know, I've seen in some businesses where the employees think actually they are the owners of the thing. So thank you very much for highlighting that. So Mr. Nyamuda, this transition of you handing over the baton stick to Simon, how has it affected the business? How has it even affected you as a person?
Okay. I think that's where I have a very positive contribution to make. The first thing is the moment I handed over the business just took off. Wow. And I thought I would have run the business well because of my background. I have an engineering technical background. Simon comes in with economics, accounts, and business leadership. And so he comes in with a fresh idea and a fresh thrust around those ideas. one of the things which happened is shortly after Simon taking over, he was able to secure for the business an operating property, which really gives you security as opposed to being in a place where you are paying rent and the tenure can be quite a challenge. That was a huge step forward in stabilizing the business. And I have seen in Simon's leadership, we now have new clients whom we didn't have. We are doing things which I had looked at, seen other people doing, but had not come to the place where I start doing them. So I see inside of him just a hunger and a desire to start new things and to do new things. And the amazing thing now is that the stability of the business has made even my own life so much better. One of the things that I say I did is that I relinquished all control. They call me Chief Executive Officer, very honoring. But I stopped dipping my fingers into the finances. I live on what I'm given, and I thank God that they're generous. But I am better off now not sitting at the helm of the business and being able to do some of the things that I do. You mentioned that I'm a pastor. I'm able to give more time into that assignment without wondering about where the creditors are and where the debtors are, which client is not yet paid, and which tender needs to be submitted when. So those things I have totally and completely surrendered, and the business is doing so much better. But the beauty is that I actually think that God gives us, even in families, opportunities to create a business, not for a season, but for a lifetime. And so when a business lives for a certain short period of time, it can only do so much. But once it's allowed to live for 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, it begins to take a form where it can become a very significant, really member of the family and even the extended family. So I do know that if the company had folded up at the times when we had some hassles, even 2008, 2009, some of the challenges that we had, it would just have folded up. But because the company has survived, it has been there, even not just for the people in the business, but even for the extended family. Many would say now and again they had a crisis, and maybe the business was able to be there for them in a manner where you can think what would have happened had the business not been there. So on my part, I'm very grateful that I handed over the baton, because I know that if I had not handed over the baton, the company was going to hit turbulent waters very soon. And so by handing over the baton, the company is stronger. Its future is exciting. Now you can see my t-shirt here is the result of a rebranding. Now new people come into the business. The business was called Compulink Systems. They came into the business, they did a rebranding and they called it Compulink. So it's their choice. They've decided to keep the name which the company was formed by. But even if they changed the name, it's for the good of the business. So I think it's to disconnect ourselves from the things we have done and to desire people to hold on to them when it doesn't add value anymore. I think as a result of the rebranding, they think that calling the company Compulink will give them impetus and energy to thrust them into the next level and really to compete in the terrain where they are going to be competing. So I've seen the organization stronger, but it's not just stronger for one person. It's stronger for the family, it's stronger for families, and I see that there is in the organization the root for eternal existence.
Wow. That's powerful. Thank you very much for sharing that, and congratulations to you for managing to hand over the baton stick to Simon. And we can testify to some of the works that Compulink has done. space and even in the philanthropy world. But moving on, Pastor Ed, there are questions that we usually ask on this show that we, each and every guest, we make sure that we ask them. What would be some of the key lessons you would like to share from your journey of entrepreneurship? What would be some of the key lessons that you would like to share with entrepreneurs, with people your age, about just legacy itself?
What I want to share, I've watched many people building strong businesses, building strong brands when they are younger and when they can run faster, starting from their 30s, their 40s, their 50s and 60s. And then I've watched the same people from 60 going forward, the people really even superintending the shrinking of what they originally built. And it's so sad, because even as they superintend the shrinking of the business, they think that is the best thing that ever happened. It could happen that you have some assets, but the assets are not sweating as best as they could if they were under a different management system. And so there are people, really what I would like to say to people who have built businesses is trust family, trust handing the baton. Your children, if you are now 70 or 80, your children are probably 60. They are not babies. They have run various things in life, they've run various businesses. For them to fail to run what you created is really, I think, an error of thinking. But what I also think is that thinking of people of my color is that we do not give enough respect to our children and grandchildren. If someone is 20 or 25, they can run a very viable international business. They can think internationally, they can run a viable international business. So if we give them a head start into business, if we involve them, if they come into our business and they understand the finances, they understand the various strategies that you are employing to make the business move forward, they will have a head start compared to their peers. But by not involving our children, they are starting off in life with no competitive advantage. So all I can say is involve your children. If they know how much money you make, they won't steal it from you. They may even become excited about the business. The more money you are making, the more they would like to be a part of that business. So hiding information, hiding finances, hiding strategies does not help involvement of your family. It actually works against you. And I think that involving family is the greatest way of thrusting a business to the next level.
Wow. Thank you very much for those principles. But I want you to touch on something, because there are some businesses where I've seen maybe the children themselves might not want to be part of the business. And, maybe parents might be struggling. So what then do I do? Who do I hand over the business to? What would be maybe your recommendation to anyone who might be having those struggles on how then can they bring those children to be part of the business? If maybe there's a Simon within the children that they are noticing, and but the children is just not showing interest at all.
Yeah, I want to respond with 90% of the situation. Really, the reason the children are not interested is because the parents have kept them out. I can actually tell you something which happened when Simon was in Form 3. During the holidays, he wrote a very elaborate application to come and work in the business. And it was a very formal application, but the business was so top heavy. I was the CEO. I took the letter to the head of HR. The head of HR took it to the MD, and it went back and forth. By the time it had done its rounds, the holiday was over. So here is a son who says, I would like to come and work in the business, and I would like really the conditions which apply to staff in the business to apply to me, and this is in Form 3. And I'm saying I missed an opportunity. If I was to be younger, I would not make it that hard for a member of the family to come into the business. And so what I want to say is the reason children lose interest when they get older is because it was never part of them. Look at the Jewish way of life. You grow up in the family business, and by the time you leave the family, whether to go to uni, You already know every aspect about the business. You know where you buy your raw materials. You know how things work in the factory. You know who your customers are. Financially, you know how the business is doing. You understand the accounts of the business. So you leave the house when you turn 18 with a full knowledge of how the business operates. And we are not doing that with our children. And yes, I've heard people saying, my children, I would like someone to hand over to. I want my children to work with me, but they're still holding everything close to their chest. What they are looking for is people to work for them.
Not to hand over.
Not to hand over to. They are not creating people who can run the business. And this is the other strategy. You see yourself running a viable business, but with no plan to hand over to anyone. Which means you are quite prepared that if tomorrow you are not there, you know there will be chaos. But you are happy about that. Now, I think that's not correct. And I think it's not fair to not have functional structures. I really think that beyond a certain age, the business should run without the involvement of the original founder. And then they can come in and give counsel if necessary. But I would like to say that in 90% of the situations, the business will run so well without the original founder that they will be happy to retire and just watch the business taking off to the next level.
Wow. I hope the founders are listening. Because I think that's so true. The 90% that you just shared, that even if you trace back, businesses like Nico's and all those other businesses, that it's actually the same thing, right? Moving on with the show, Pastor Ed, we're about to round up. There's always a question that we ask. We on this show, we believe in personal development. We believe in growth. What would be some of the books that you would recommend young business people or anyone who wants to be involved in business to read, or books that can actually help people to succeed? Yeah.
Well, I think business is life. And so if you are not dual, like you are one thing in business and one thing in life, I really think that books, the Bible for me is the most central book that I read. I read it again and again and again. And I come back to read it and I'm wondering, did I read this before? But yes, but I think just understanding the life of Jesus Christ, because we say we need to follow Jesus. And I think when we say we need to follow Jesus, we then need to define in what areas we need to follow Jesus. So for example, I remember I was doing a listing and I came up with about 20 different areas where I must follow Jesus. Jesus in his leadership style, Jesus in his interaction with authority figures, Jesus as a husband, relating to his wife, the bride, which is the church. How does he relate as the bridegroom? Jesus in his way. And so you look at the various areas. If I'm to walk in the footsteps of Jesus, I came up with about 20 areas of following Jesus. And so it's all very well to say I want to follow Jesus. It's something else to break it down to specific areas. How did he carry himself in leadership? What was his response to power when he had power and absolute authority? How did he carry himself? So really I think following Jesus, but understanding exactly how he carried himself in specific settings. This for me has been really such an eye-opener.
Wow. Oh, thank you for that. And I think for me, being also a coach, I think Jesus is one of the greatest leadership examples that we can ever use, because I was listening, I don't know who gave this illustration. I think it was Miles Monroe, who said that Jesus had a company and he had 12 sort of like managers or something. But after he went to heaven, these 12 disciples then multiplied, and the company is now sort of like a global company. And which other organization has done that other than the company of Jesus? So I think that's a great illustration that you have just given us. Yeah.
I think one of the things which we can learn from Jesus is discipleship. So throughout, with his 12 managers, he discipled them. And he used to say things in public to 5,000 people. Then he would go into the closet with the inner circle. And then they would be like, explain to us in more detail. Tell us more. So he discipled them to a depth which the public did not get to. And so they were able, after he was gone, after they handed the baton to him, they were able to sustain what he had been building in his lifetime. So discipleship is a huge thing, and Jesus did it so well.
Wow, amazing. Thank you very much, Pastor Ed. And what would be your, as we close off the show now, what would be your last words to our viewers who are tuned into the show?
Really, my last words is that businessmen, parents, your children are powerhouses. And you can actually superintend over the destruction of their creativity by not involving them earlier. The earlier you can involve them in your business operations, the more they will understand, the more they can fall in love with it, and the more they can become the agents to take it to the next level. In our organizations, we give responsibility to finance managers and HR managers, but we don't easily give the same responsibilities to family. And I think if we can begin to share with family, they will become ready to receive the baton and take that which we create to higher and higher levels. I'm speaking from experience. I've seen it happen in my own life. And so I would recommend it to each and every person to consider equipping your children and grandchildren and seeing them as the people to pick up the baton and run and make what you create now become eternal.
Wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Nyamuda, for those last words. And thank you very much for agreeing to be on the show. We know you are a very prestigious man, and we are really humbled to have you on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of our amazing... Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this amazing episode with Pastor Nyamuda. Special thanks to Compulink Systems for sponsoring this particular show. And please do get in touch with them. They sell these amazing iPads. So to my young lads who are watching the show, and even to business people, even people like Mr. Nyamuda here, please do get in touch with them. They have these amazing iPads for you. Come to Compulink Systems. But ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel to get more of these inspiring episodes. From me, myself, Tendai Mungate, and the crew behind the scenes, it's a wrap. Let's meet in the next episode. Thank you.